Hello, everybody. It's Mrs. Pound, and we are talking about the oceans in Chapter 4.2. And today's topic in Section 425 is ocean exploration. So, our objectives today are to discuss the history of ocean exploration and identify technologies that advance the study of the oceans. So, way back when, the first method for really determining and exploring the oceans was the line and sinker method. This is a very primitive method that was used first in about 100 BC by the Greeks. And what they would do is they would just add a heavy weight to the end of a measured rope, and they would lower that rope into the Mediterranean Sea to see how deep it was. And they would take and they would have the remaining rope and they would just subtract how much they had remaining from the amount that they started with to determine how deep the water was in that location. And it provided very little detailed information because you'd have to collect a lot of data, go along a long ways to really figure out how deep everything was to really get a good idea of the topography. But this was the only method that we had to really explore the ocean depths for about 2,000 years. So then in about 1872, the HMS Challenger was sent out by the British government. Now, this would have been during the Victorian age, which was characterized by more science, a lot of exploration, because Queen Victoria's husband, Prince Albert, was a man of science. He was very curious. He wanted to know things. So, a lot of these types of expeditions were starting to be funded by their government. And the HMS Challenger went out for a 1,000-day journey. It covered three oceans and covered 68,000 nautical miles, which was a lot for that time. It identified new marine organisms and gathered temperature, ocean current, water chemistry, and ocean floor deposit data at 362 stations, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it was a start. And as we know, the oceans are vast. So they did cover a lot of territory, but still just scratching the surface because the oceans are so huge. Then submersibles were developed. A submersible is a small underwater vessel, and this is a more modern version. Most of the ones that they started out with were just big balls of iron, maybe with a little peephole like this here. They were starting to be developed in the 1800s. They were first developed for military use. There was actually one that was used in the Revolutionary War. Um, the ones, though, that were used in the early wars were um, pretty easy targets. They didn't do a whole lot, they just went down in the water. These do allow scientists to travel to the bottom of the oceans to discover precious minerals, manganese nodules, and salt deposits. But they're basically just big balls with peepholes for the most part. They might have be more like a submarine now. We have submarines that can travel. And again, those were developed for the military first. And so a little more advanced, but also very expensive things. And part of the reason it's mainly the military that has submarines nowadays is they first did start off by using battery power for the first submarine that was able to stay down and travel great distances, but now they run on nuclear power. Now, we also use echo sounders. These produce a sound just below the water's surface. And actually, the average person can have an echo sounder on a boat. So it would be on a boat, and the boat would be going across the ocean and sailing across the ocean or whatever water they are trying to map the surface underneath of, and giving off sound signals. And maybe some of you have used one of these. You can have an echo sounder to help you find fish. So scientists measure the time it takes for the sound to return or echo from the object it collided with. And it's used to detect submarines, locate fish, measure the thickness of Arctic ice, and record ocean depth for oceanographic charting. So just trying to get an idea of that topography. But during the wars, yes, these were used to locate submarines. Okay, and like I said, you can have one to locate fish. Now, a little more advanced, but the same idea is multi-beam sonar. This is use sound waves again reflected off the ocean floor to create a computer-generated image of the ocean floor. So now this gets computers more involved, so you get a better detail. You also, the beam is spread out a little more, so you're getting a little bit larger of a swath of the ocean floor when you are doing this. We can also use satellite radar. This can detect large features like mountains on the ocean floor. It cannot detect the smaller features, but it still is helpful. And then there are remotely operated vehicles called ROVs for short. These are the most accurate. They have attached to them underwater cameras, and they can go up to a depth of 4,000 meters. So here we have an ROV. Many of them are even larger. This doesn't have a whole lot of attachments on it, but you will see cameras and lights and everything on them because obviously light is not getting down to 4 kilometers below the surface. So you have to take light down there to illuminate the surfaces. And so these are very useful because people don't have to go down because people are limited by the pressure of the ocean and the fact that we have to take oxygen with us, where these guys can withstand more pressure and are not limited by the need for oxygen. So, our objectives today were to discuss the history of ocean exploration, to identify technologies that advance the study of the oceans. So, if you listen to this video, go ahead and draw your favorite sea creature um, next to your name at the beginning of this section. So don't forget your 5 questions, and I will be back with more about oceans.